My name's Thor, and you're listening to Cage Radio. Hey, welcome to Cage Radio, guys. We just finished watching UFC 296, and it was a pretty good card. I'm not gonna say it was the ultimate banger. They did have some really good fights on there, though. It's crazy to think that we're at UFC 296. We're almost at UFC 300. I started really paying attention back at UFC 52, which was the UFC where Randy Couture fought Chuck Liddell for the first time. I'd been watching The Ultimate Fighter 1, and I really loved that show. It inspired me to become a fighter. I started training right after that, and I got really, really into it. Um, yeah, that was a game changer for everybody. Um, but now here we are at UC 2 296, and boy, we had some real bangers here. We also had some very sad fights. Some very, very sad. We're gonna go up the list. First off, I just want to start by saying that I didn't watch the early prelims. Sorry. I don't know who took Gear or Cody Durden or Andre Feely or Lucas Almeida or I don't like sue me. Shamil Gaziev or Martin Bidet. Maybe I'll go back and watch it some other time, but no. I also didn't watch Casey O'Neill versus Ariane Lipsky, and it came in a little late for that one too. By the time I started watching, it was already the start of Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher, and I'm happy that I started there because that was an awesome fight to watch Cody in. I've always been a big fan of Cody Garbrandt. I love the way he fights. I think he's great at setting people up for crazy knockouts, and he formulates really cool game plans too. So his trap game is good. His boxing is super solid. He's a great fighter. And yeah, he done flash knocked out Brian Kelleher. Yeah, he flatlined that man. Knocked him out. Made it look easy. Made it look quick. I I had to go back and rewatch it a few times because it was so fast. It was like a phantom punch. But yeah, good job, Cody Garbrandt. Happy you won, Brian Kelleher. You know, back to the early prelims, I guess. Not you have to go sub prelim. You're at the early prelims now. It's a hard pill to swallow, but you know that was the breaks, buddy. And then we had Irene Aldana versus Kel Rosa, and that was a real war, a real war. Like those two really went at it. Now, I will say that Irene Aldana needs to learn how to check some leg kicks because I'm not gonna lie, she got kicked in the leg like maybe 50 times and didn't check a single one. She said that part of the strategy was because she had an injury. She was going to. Sorry, I'm recording this the day of. Fucking sue me. She said the reason why that was the case was because she had some sort of injury, and I don't know. Injuries be damned. Like, learn how to lift your leg up and check a kick or turn your knee, whatever you got to do. But you're a professional fighter, for fuck's sake. I have better. I'm not a professional. I haven't fought in a very, very long time. I'm just getting back into it right now. I could check those kicks better than that. Guaranteed, 100%. Every time. So, no excuses. Really. And I have shit knees too. Like, my knees suck. So, I don't know. But she done pieced her face up. She, like, Irene Aldana, like, beat the crap out of Carol Rosa. And the size difference between the two of them became really, really, really apparent to me. Because if Carol Rosa had been the same size as Irene Aldana, it might have been a different night. It might have been a really different night. But Irene looked like a much bigger person in there, and it showed. She had a longer reach. She was blasting Carol like all night in the face. like Carol Rosa's face looked like hamburger at the end, like a big bloody hamburger mess. Yeah, not to say that she didn't put up a fight and she didn't throw a lot of stuff back at her. Irene definitely looked like she'd been in a fight, and it was a war. It really was a war. They beat the crap out of each other in there. But the fact of the matter is, Irene, other than the fact that she couldn't check a single goddamn kick for some reason, Irene dominated that fight through strength and size and superior boxing. Moving on. Alonzo Menifield versus Dustin Jacoby. Um, it was fairly even for a while. Jacoby was using some good angles. Alonzo was hitting him with some really flush shit for a while. But it's the tide started to turn in the final round. And Alonzo just started smashing him with big shots. And I think that Dustin was actually in the lead going into the third round. I think that midway through the third round, he looked like he was actually doing really well. He was picking up the pace. He was starting to throw a lot more. But Alonzo is one of these guys who I think bides his time to store up his energy and then throws big power shots. Big power shots, so he has like periods of low energy throughout the fight, and then he picks his moment and then throws something crazy. So he'll look like he's not doing very much, and then Pam, all of a sudden, he throws something out of nowhere, and it just devastates the other guy. That's what happened, and that is how he took the fight. Rounds 2 and 3 belong to him, obviously, and I think that Dustin Jacoby pretty easily handled round 1, but wasn't enough. So unanimous decision for Mr. Menifield. Okay. Moving right along to Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Now, I like Bryce Mitchell. He's an interesting character. He's kind of a southern boy, but I'm also a Californian, and I live pretty close to Sacramento. So, Josh Emmett, I didn't realize Josh Emmett had a nuclear bomb in his hand. I didn't realize that. When I think featherweights, I don't think like devastating knockout power. But Bryce Mitchell had the craziest knockout ever. Like he started having seizures. If you guys saw that, holy fucking shit. My God. Josh Emmett done slapped the soul out of Bryce Mitchell. He cleaned every single clock in Bryce Mitchell's house. Like, I would not be surprised if Bryce Mitchell gets demoted down to prelim status after this. I mean, he's really, really popular guy, so he'll still be like a draw no matter what. Like, I like Bryce. Even seeing Bryce get knocked out like that doesn't make me feel differently about Bryce. I still like him quite a bit. But, yeah. Old Josh Emmett done fired the cannon, hit a home run. What other euphemisms can I use for this? He chambered around and fired it straight and true. Like he executed perfectly. Like, what can I say? Like, it was like a round 1 minute and 57 seconds, just smashed him. It was so bad that even Josh had to stop and like take a look and be like, okay, I gotta stop here because like I obviously really, really, really hurt this guy. If Josh Emmett wanted to, he could have murdered Bryce Mitchell because Bryce Mitchell was on the ground completely KO'd for several minutes. And it's not an exaggeration. There was like a time there where I think everybody was very concerned. I was concerned. I don't usually give a shit. I was very concerned for Bryce Mitchell during this. I was like, oh my God, how did this happen? But, he got up eventually and walked off. So, good for Josh. Josh is back in rankings. I'm sure he's probably going to get a title shot or a number 1 contendership shot after this. I don't know. What's his ranking at? I don't even know. What's your ranking? 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 What's your ranking, buddy? Usually they have a ranking for you, but nope. I don't see it. I don't see the rank. Oh well. Moving right along. Okay, now we're talking about the sad fights. Like, almost every single fight that came after this was sad in some way. First things first. Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. This is probably the saddest fight of the night. Like, to be quite honest with you. Like, not only is Tony Ferguson clearly washed, he's so washed up. Like, just watching him get smacked around by Paddy, and Paddy looked like he was a full weight class or two bigger than Tony. That was another thing, but Tony looked old. Tony looked washed as an old blanket. It looks like Tony had just started fighting at the age of 40. Not only that, but like, frankly, Tony Ferguson is stupid. Tony Ferguson is an idiot. He's not attached to reality. The things that he says, the things that he does in the cage, all of this stuff together just makes me question whether or not he is a rational person. I know that he has struggles with mental health before, but like, on top of that, he doesn't seem to have the proper fight IQ necessary to compete anymore, because like, you know, once your granite chin and your unshakable athleticism, both of which were his like mainstay abilities, was like your crazy athleticism, super strong chin, both of those are gone now. What is he left with? Crazy, good cardio. You know, he's still crazy. He still has good cardio, but his striking sucks. He's not very strong. His reach is always going to be good, but he has no power behind it. His coordination's off, you know. And Paddy Pimblett, there's the other side of the sad story. Paddy, the baddie, is just apparently mediocre. He's just mid. He didn't seem that great to me at all. I watching that fight, he looks like he got gassed early in the third round, or he was already gassed by the end of the second, one or the other. His striking looked okay in the first round, but then he spent the whole rest of the fight like grappling with Tony, which just like further drove home the fact that I don't think that either one of them is really that good at this point. I think Paddy is overblown, a super hype job. I do like him as a person. I think his personality is great. I think he would be great to get a beer with and like chop it up with, and I would love to train with him. You know, I would love to get in there, mix it up with the guy, and, you know, learn from the dude, because, you know, he's obviously way beyond me. I'm not in the UFC, but I would love to train with the dude, because I think he's a decent man, unlike Tony Ferguson, who's literally just a fucking basket case who thinks he's all that. Sad. So, you know, Paddy wins by unanimous decision, because Tony is obviously just past his prime, no longer has what it takes to stay in the UFC, and I think that this is this is definitely his last fight. There's no more room to slide anymore. He's out. He's got to be out, and he better, I hope he has some sort of retirement plan going on. He better have something up his sleeve, like, because this is it. If they let him keep fighting, like, who could he really fight now? Like the girls? Like he's too old to fight any of the dudes now. Like anybody on the prelims could beat him. Anyone. And Paddy, I mean Paddy really needs to work on his conditioning. His striking's okay, and he's very big for the division. But, you know, I didn't really see anything spectacular out of him, especially against the ghost of Tony Ferguson. Anyway, moving on. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Steven Wonderboy Thompson. Boy. I wasn't really sure what I was going to get when I looked at this. I saw that the odds looked crazy. Like crazier than the Tony Ferguson Paddy Pimblett odds. Like minus 625 plus 455 versus Tony is 250 to minus 310. Like that is significant. That's really, really crazy odds, which surprised me. Like Stephen Thompson doesn't strike me as the kind of person who's like so out the window that he doesn't have a shot. That's Tony Ferguson's. Like, let's compare the two, right? We got like one up and comer versus like an old wash guy versus another up and comer versus another old wash guy. Big differences between the two old wash guys in both these cases is that Tony Ferguson isn't smart, doesn't have a proper fight IQ, does crazy, wild, stupid things, and doesn't really ever seem to have a good game plan going into things. Whereas Stephen Thompson is smart, is wise, does have a good idea about how to strategize, knows what his strengths are, knows what his weaknesses are, has worked on these things extensively with proper training and proper trainers. Tony Ferguson bought a hype job. Stephen Thompson bought a rape train with no brakes. And despite this, Stephen Thompson being older, Tony Ferguson being younger, Stephen Thompson put up a way better fight despite getting finished by someone who is undeniably, certainly the number one contender now. And probably going to be the one who's going to fight Leon Edwards next. And I do not envy Leon Edwards, especially after seeing his performance against Colby Covington. But we'll talk about that later. Steven did a great job in the first round of trying to resist Shavkat and his wrestling game. You know, that submission wrestling game from that guy looks really, really, really dangerous. And to Wonderboy's credit, despite his age, despite all the miles he has on the engine, he put up a really good fight trying to resist that guy. There were some points, though, where Wonderboy looked like he was in such a bad position. Especially once Shavkat finally got him to the ground. Wonderboy just looked bad. And he never got a chance to get off his kickboxing. Like the karate never got a chance really to come out. I noticed what he was trying to do. He was trying to control the center of the cage by hitting him with those big side kicks, which always backed Shavkat up like a good 4, 5, 6, 7 feet. Right? That was a great way to try to control the cage. I saw what his strategy was, but Shavkat wasn't going to let that happen. Shavkat is too slick, and he capitalized, submitting him in the second round and 4 minutes and 56 seconds, like the last few moments. Like, if Steven had just held out for a few more moments, he could have survived. But I think that Shavkat's too good. Too good. So, Shavkat takes it, and Stephen Thompson, again, another guy who's probably headed for the retirement bin. Or maybe not. You know, this wasn't that bad. It wasn't like a Tony Ferguson washing. And he could still compete. He just got to work on some stuff. Yeah, I got a lot of faith in Wonderboy. He can come back. Alexander Pantoja versus Brandon Royval. I gotta admit, like, these are two flyweights I don't give a shit about. I did not know too much about Alexander Pantoja before this or Brandon Royval. I don't really follow the flyweights, especially now that like Mighty Mouse is out of it. But And Brandon just he could not resist the takedown. He could not resist the grappling game. He just lacked the skills overall. Every time they were on the feet, it seemed like Alexander was kind of out of his element, but not completely outclassed. But Brandon was definitely getting the better of those exchanges. The only problem is that Brandon just could not resist Alexander's overwhelming pressure on the ground and in the takedowns. He just had no answer for it, and that was the end. It was like that almost every single round. I think Brandon might have won a single round, but yeah, there was no giving it to him. And then finally, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. I got to tell you, this was the most surprising of all. Like I could not tell you what was going through Colby Covington's head. Because he had some success at some points during the 5 rounds with taking Leon Edwards down. He had a lot of success at some points, but Leon was sure at every single moment that Colby took him down to either reverse the takedown or to counter takedown to even things up, because he wanted to show how dominant he was over Colby. Because Colby had said some things that were really, really inappropriate, like Colby does. I've really not ever spent a lot of time watching Colby Covington, because I know that he's just a heel. But like the heelness, his heely ways, I think were just a little bit too much this time around. Making fun of a dead guy's dad, or a guy's dead dad who got murdered. Like, what? Like, you're going too far. And then like I don't know if he's trying to sabotage Donald Trump by saying that, like, by putting the dead father and then likening himself to being a Trump supporter, but like it's not a good look. Either way, people love a villain, and I know that he's doing that to play the whole thing up. In the end, Leon Edwards beat him soundly, and I really hope that Colby Covington gets forcibly retired, because now we see where he's at, and it's nowhere good. So that's where we're at. That's what happened. Overall, it was a good card. I enjoyed it. I got a little bit bored during some of the fights. Like I was definitely bored at some points during the Alexander Pantoja fight. I was bored during the Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington fight, especially once the second round started, and I realized that Colby just wasn't himself. There were some fights where I was on the edge of my seat, though. Like, I was very interested in how Bryce Mitchell was going to go with Josh Emmett. I was I had some real moments of, like, heartache and hope for Paddy Pimblett versus Ferguson, Shavkat versus Rakhmonov. I really wanted to see Thompson do well in that one. For some of these fights, I was really on the edge of my seat. I was super surprised at the war between Irene Aldana and Carl Rosa. Like, those are all really surprising to me. Like, some really great things. And then, like, the crazy knockout from Cody Garbrandt. Like, these were some good fights. You know, I'm just a little underwhelmed by the main event. And the co-main event, I didn't like either one of those very much. But that's me. That's just little old me. And, yeah. I wonder how this next card's going to go. I'm not going to buy it. There's just not enough people on it that I want to see. But until next time, should probably figure something out to end things with. Cats are having sex outside. Isn't that great? Isn't that grand? Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, as always, it's Cage Radio. Have a good night.